Are you ready to get your feet wet? Because this is the Knowledge Pool, hosted by Gathering Information. We're here to bring you a casual conversation between friends about everything to do with collecting, trading, and playing Magic the Gathering.
I am Tams.
I am Step.
And I am Laura.
So put on your bathing suits and dive right into the Knowledge Pool.
Hello and welcome to the zoo.
Welcome to the Knowledge Pool.
Is this the Knowledge Pool? It looks like the cat
The kiddie pool.
something. The kitty pool.
See? I can do it too.
We are on episode 39, and today we are joined by two very special guests.
Cantankerous cats.
Salem and Enigma.
If you happen to hear loud rumbling noises, there's probably not been an earthquake.
It's purring.
We just had, either the microphone fell over or the cats are purring.
Take that picture and we'll tweet it out with the podcast.
We will. Yes.
This is the state of things.
Yep.
I have my Christmas tree up in my office, and so therefore the boxes that all of the decorations go in are next to my desk, and they have created a little pseudo table next to the recording desk, and the cats are happily perched together, snuggling.
They've
Yes,
got
indeed.
a box.
Mm-hmm. So how are you guys doing?
You might be able to hear I'm still a little under the weather, or under the weather again.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fighting off a low-level infection throughout all of December because of my crazy work schedule.
Yay!
Yeah, it's not fun. And last week we had to take the Knowledge Pool off. We had to take a snow day.
Yeah.
We had to drop papers off at a warehouse, and the drive was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Took us, 2 hours to get there and back? Something like that?
Yeah, plus you left pretty late in the day.
Yeah, just the way things ended up working. Now, tonight we're supposed to get up to 20 centimeters of snow again, but so far it's good. So,
I guess I should leave for work early in the morning.
I think that's probably wise. So, how are you feeling?
I'm fine. I'm just over a head cold.
Nice.
So
So we're all done for the winter,
Yes.
right? Like, that's it?
I don't
I
usually
hope so.
get sick.
Yeah, I don't
in
usually
the
get
winter.
sick this often, so I'm going to blame Step
Yes.
as a recurring source of infection.
That's
Thanks,
fair.
Step.
We do get awful close. So, what have we been up to?
Oh, man.
It's been 2 weeks since the last
And it's
Knowledge
sad
Pool.
because we were all excited last week to
I
talk
know.
about what we did.
It was so
we've
exciting.
done so much magic in the last 2 weeks. It's been amazing. Bless you, kitty. I was doing a Let's Play the other day for my channel, and it was just sneeze after sneeze after sneeze.
From you or the cat?
The cat, Enigma, kept sneezing. I'm like, okay. Poor guy.
Well,
So
he sounds cute.
He's so cute. Let's start way back at last week, if we can remember. What did we do last
We
week?
don't need
guys?
to have to remember. We took pictures.
We did.
We drafted Unstable.
We finally drafted Unstable. One of our friend of the show, has was good enough to buy a box and let his friends draft it. And With him.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's be honest. It was a struggle, and he might not have been there, and his box may not have survived. But it did.
And it was so much fun. So what did we draft? Well, we drafted what everybody else was drafting last week.
Well, it was interesting because halfway through the draft, he decided to go ahead and make it a dino-sized draft because we were all having fun.
And because we had 9 people, so that worked out to the correct number of packs.
Yeah. So Unstable.
So I have to say, the 4th pack didn't actually do that much to my deck.
It helped me. Well, it didn't help me, but it just made a good deck better.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Same for me.
It really helped me out. I was skeptical. Like, I would have been happy enough with just the 3 packs, but the 4th pack really did add stuff. Now, I think I misbuilt my deck to begin with, so that's maybe on me. But having the 4th pack meant that a bad deck didn't get any worse, certainly.
So who wants to go first?
One of you two, because I do not have my deck pictures in hand.
All right, well, how about I go first, then I can give Tams back her phone, because
Sounds
that's
good.
what I'm looking at the moment. So I ended up in black-red. And I figured out early on that I wanted to just focus on 1 or 2 mechanics. I didn't want to spread myself too thin. I wanted a focus deck, and I also wanted to only be 2 colors. Because I just didn't really pick up any of the fixing. I had some cards that I could have splashed pretty easily if I'd wanted to, but I figured consistent is usually the way to go in a format when no one knows what they're doing. So the 2 mechanics I focused on basically were contraptions and dice rolling.
Nice.
Kind of. So I ended up with a couple of the Inhumaniacs. Now, I have seen some of the pre-release that LRR did before we drafted. So I have been super impressed with the Inhumaniac. It's the 2-mana 1/1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you roll dice, and then if it's a 3 or a 4, you put 1+1+1 counter on it. If you roll a 5 or 6, you put 2, and then if you roll a 1, you remove all the counters. So I decided I'd go with that guy, and then I had 3 Paniacs as kind of the base of the deck. So those are the 3-mana X3s, and then you roll a dice on your upkeep, and that's what its power is for the turn. So they're really bad on defense, but they can be great on offense. And then for the contraption side of things, I had a couple of the steady-handed mooks, which are death touchers that assemble a contraption when they enter the battlefield. And then for top end, basically my only top end for creatures were 2 garbage elementals. So 2 5-drops, and I had 2 different versions of the garbage elemental because there are several of them. So I had the Unleash one that gives any creatures with a counter of any type that I control Art Menace, which is disgusting and won me multiple games just because there are very few cards in the set that have 2 or more figures in their artwork. And then the other one I had was the Battle Cry one, and then when it enters the battlefield, you roll 2 6-sided dice and then get goblins equal to the difference.
Ooh.
Again, dice rolling. So in order to kind of manipulate my dice rolling, or possibly my opponent's dice rolling, so I had a Snickering Squirrel, which lets you tap it to re-roll, or to increase the result of a dice roll by 1. I had a Krark's Other Thumb, which was super good when I had it.
So sweet.
That lets you roll 2 dice instead of 1. I had an enchantment, the Squirrel-Powered Scheme, which increases the result of each die you roll by 2, which is pretty cool. And then I had a couple of pieces of removal, Super Duper Death Rays ×2. I had 2 of the Finder's Keepers, which is 6-mana, destroy any creature. And then my super sweet card, which I was really impressed with, was the Buzzing Wackadoodle. So it's a 4-mana do-nothing enchantment. Basically, it enters the battlefield.
It's an artifact, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, artifact.
Okay.
So it enters the battlefield. You and your opponent both get the opportunity to choose either Whack or Doodle. If you pick Whack and your opponent also picks Whack, then you can tap Wackadoodle to essentially have your opponent lose 2 life.
Okay.
If
Seems
if you've both picked Doodle, you can tap Wackadoodle, and you, like me, gain 3 life. And then if you pick mismatching words, you get to tap 2 and tap Wackadoodle to draw a card.
That seems like the very strongest, most strong option.
Yeah, so it's good though, because the thing is, I was running a fairly aggressive deck. Like I said, I topped out at 5. I had a bunch of 2 and 3 very aggressive, kind of spiraling out of control creatures, and so there were occasions where I voted for each of those 2 options. I voted for the Whack when I strongly had outpaced my opponent on the board. They were at like 6 life or something like that, and they could not choose that.
Didn't you do that with someone at 2 in one game?
I don't think it was quite that low, but yeah, very close. So then they literally can't choose that option.
Right.
Because if they do, they're going to die in a turn or 2, and there's nothing they can do, and they know that. So that means they have to choose the other option, which means you're going to be able to draw cards.
Yeah.
There was also a time when I was far behind in the sense that I had some creatures on the ground, but my opponent had a lot of flyers, and I did not have currently any way to interact with them, so I wanted to gain life.
Yeah.
And my opponent was like, yeah, that's fine, you can gain life. I was like, great, I am now gaining 3 life, and you're hitting me in the air for 3 or 2.
So you were stable.
Right.
Just
so this
on a single card.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And then when I did get to draw cards, which happened a couple of times, it was pretty awesome. So
Because drawing cards is also something you want in the aggro deck.
it was really nice having the card advantage, which is not something that Rakdos usually gets or wants to play, because usually they're too slow.
Yeah. I noticed that there was quite a bit of, like, just random drawing cards in Unstable, more than I expected, and I think it's sort of a symptom of it being that they can just throw card draw around, because sure, it's powerful, but who cares?
Yeah.
And I found that a very fun experience.
I had many ways to get really good card advantage in my deck. The other mechanic, like I said, that I focused on were the contraptions. I was running 7. They were all uncommon or higher. I had a mythic. I had a couple of rares, I think. So the 2 contraptions that I really found stood out amongst the rest, unsurprisingly, the mythic and the rare. So the first one, Pet Project, which was whenever you crank it, put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battle under your control. And keep in mind, I have multiple removal spells, and I'm also an aggressive creature deck.
Yep.
So that card was pretty good. And then I also had Record Store. Whenever you crank it, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts that you control. So it itself is an artifact. It always will do at least one. And then you put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library.
Oh, that seems sweet.
So at its worst,
gross.
it is crank, draw a card.
Yeah.
At best, which happened to me once or twice, it was crank, look at the top 5 and put one of those into your hand.
Yep.
Nice.
It was pretty good. So, yes, my deck turned out pretty well. The dice rolling got me there sometimes on, like, the Paniacs. I never really had an Maniac go off too badly, which is a bit sad for me, but the Garbage Elementals were definitely my MVPs.
Nice.
And the contraptions were very value-filled for me.
Seems
so
good.
I ended up going 3-0. I played out all my games. I played against Mono Red. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, overall, sweet deck. Very good, very fun time playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I also had fun, although I didn't do quite so well. I think the first problem I had was that I jumped around a lot during the draft. And I really should have been more focused on having fun than trying to spike the draft. It's very difficult for me to let go of trying to pick what is the best pick.
So
this was
a phantom draft with no prizes on the line.
Yeah. This is about as low stakes as it gets. But I decided I wanted to, I don't know, win. Because winning is fun.
That's true.
So I started off with taking Crafty Octopus very highly, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll just build all the contraptions. And then I kind of just didn't do that because none of the contraptions looked terribly interesting. Like, a lot of the common ones came around, and they're fine. But just thereafter, I started taking as much removal in blue and white as I could see. Because both Magic Word and Go to Jail and Sacrifice Play all seemed very good. But the main problem I had with those is that I never seemed to draw them.
Well, I mean, I had 3 Magic Words in my sideboard. That was my potential splash removal. Sorry about that.
Well, I had 2 Magic Words, 2 Sacrifice Plays, and 2 Go to Jails.
Wow.
And
that's a fair amount of removal for blue-white.
Yeah, it looked like it should have been very strong, but I played my first round against a hard, like, control lock deck, and that's never fun for me. So the rest of the deck, my first pick was Clock Napper, which is the 5-mana 2/2 that you steal an opponent's phase for a turn.
Yeah, I saw you play that card. It seemed really strong.
I thoroughly enjoyed that card. I always chose the beginning phase because when they're tapped out, you just get, it's basically a time walk.
Yeah.
You get to draw a card and untap everything, and then they can't do anything, so they pass and you draw a card and untap everything, which is already untapped. So I mean, it is basically just draw a card your opponent doesn't, but it could also lead to one game against Mill. I was down to 2 cards left in my library, so I did that and won the game on 0 cards left in my library.
That's amazing.
Which was phenomenal. I was splashing both Phoebe, Head of Sneak, and X in my deck.
That's gross.
And when I actually got to play them, they were very, very fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
For you or for the opponent? X doesn't seem like that much fun for the opponent.
well, X was fun for my opponent when he got to discard it and make me real sad. But, yeah, fun for me, mostly. I was kind of all over the place just trying to build a value deck, and I think if I go into another undraft, I'm going to go for maximum fun.
Yeah.
Which is what I should have done the first time. So my record also shows that I should have gone for maximum fun, because I think I went 1 and 2. But I did have a good amount of fun. So
I went for maximum fun.
For whom?
For me, here is my pack one, pick one. Okay, to start with, I did not watch much of the Loading Ready Run stuff, so I was really uncertain about contraptions, about how they functioned as far as the cranking goes and where to put them and exactly how it worked.
And we did explain that at the beginning of the draft, because we had some players who had never
We
heard of
did,
that,
but I
basically,
still felt a little uncomfortable with the mechanic
It's
itself.
hard to visualize without having seen it done.
Exactly, and I'm a visual person, so I really wanted to kind of stay away from that if I could, so that I didn't have to worry about how do I craft a deck around a mechanic I don't quite know how it works in and out. So I opened my first pack, and this is the card that I saw. It's called As Luck Would Have It. It's 1 green for an enchantment.
And I believe it's one of the ones that has multiple versions, isn't it?
I think so.
I'm not sure, but this version is hexproof. Whenever you roll a die, put a number of luck counters on As Luck Would Have It equal to the result. Then, if there are 100 or more luck counters on As Luck Would Have It, you win the game. Count both rolls if you re-roll a die.
So that seems like a fun alternate win condition.
So I knew...
So seems very strong.
So I knew there was a lot of stuff in the game that involved rolling dice.
Yep.
But I knew a lot of it had to do with contraptions. So I was like, am I going to be able to get there without crossing into a mechanic I really don't want to have to play?
As luck would have it.
As luck would have it,
That was terrible.
I went into augments instead. So I basically took anything that could have, and not that I, expected to win con with this, but I figured it would give me a good place to build around
Yeah.
and create a deck with. So I grabbed anything that had a rolling mechanic and anything that seemed like a strong host or augment. So I wound up with 2 mother kangaroos.
Those are pretty good.
Roll a 6-sided die, put a number of +1/+1 counters on this creature equal to the result. Now here's the thing. I also had a Croc's Other Thumb,
Yes.
which allows you to roll 2 and take 1 away. So if I get, as luck would have it out, I'm putting the total of the 2 that I rolled on there every
Right.
time, which is
Seems
sweet.
like you can count to 100 pretty quickly with that.
That was my thinking. So I'm not going to lie, I had ridiculously good luck with rolling the night we played. All of my games. Anytime I had to roll, I never whiffed. I never went. My kangaroos were never less than a 3/3, which is pretty sweet.
They're 4 mana, right?
5 mana.
5 mana.
So I had 2 of those. I had a multi-headed, the Hydra thing. I had a Hummingbird. Now this card was sweet.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it is a 2/3 with flying that you augment onto something and the whole thing becomes a flyer.
So it's +2/+3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, ...
Right.
So it augments for 4, 3 and a white. So I was green-white. I would put this on anything.
Yeah.
An ordinary pony or a willing test subject. No, not the willing test subject. That was the dude that wasn't an augment. I had a shaggy camel, 2 ordinary ponies, and a wild crocodile, and 2 adorable kittens. So I was flying in for boatloads of stuff. As far as removal, I had to go to jail. I had 2 really epic punches. Actually, I had 3, but I didn't run the other one. I had 2 go to jails, but I only run 1. And I had a sacrifice play, and I had oddly uneven.
And
I had an entirely normal armchair, which is the one card I really wanted to play because I love the idea of sneaking things onto the battlefield. And it's surprisingly easy to do so. More so the first time you do it, less so subsequent times, but it's still, if you put it on the back of a land and you're careful how you tap.
It doesn't work quite as well the first time you play it because you don't remember that it's only attacking or blocking creatures.
Oh god, I screwed myself twice with that. Oh, it was so painful, and I'm like, never mind, you didn't see it. They're like,
The return to hand.
Oh, it's so painful. So I ended up going 3-0, but I did have the bye. So, but just so you know, I would have won that game anyway. No, this deck was so ridiculously synergistic.
So how many times did you win with As Luck Would Have It?
0. I didn't need it. I had it out several times, and I had it close several times.
That makes me a little bit sad.
I was just smashing face. Flying in and drawing. Oh, card draw.
Humming kangaroos would probably be.
No, kangaroo's not a host, is it?
It is a host.
Is it?
Yup.
The mother kangaroo?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yup. It's pretty good. And the double ground pounder and the willing test subject were pretty good. I had the ordinary beaver as well. It was super good. The first game I played against a red-based contraption deck, and he just couldn't get out in front of my guys, because these, like,
you're not waiting around every third turn for contraptions.
No, and these suckers get big. Like, they're huge for really cheap. If you roll well. Yeah, I was rolling quite well. So I was very, very happy. And the second round that I played against friend of the show, Evan, who was running a ridiculous mill deck.
So I'll be honest, I played against Evan in the first round. I won in, I think, 3.
I did too.
And afterwards, he was like, yeah, I wasn't really sure what direction to take my deck in. I was like, oh, you're sideboarding 3 and mainboarding 1 of the mill host. I mean, I'm not saying you should run a mill.
Are you the reason I got milled out?
I just might have suggested that he probably had enough to go for it if he wanted to try it.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to murder you.
So I also played against Evan, and that was my second round. And I beat him in 5 out of the 6 games we played.
I won in 3. But that one game was miserable because he was milling me for... As he said, he will verify, he rolled like I was rolling for my creatures. He was like, mill 8, mill 6,
when you hit 6, like even twice, by that point in the game, that's usually half your library gone. Like,
it's harsh. It's really harsh. So that was painful.
All I'm saying is that mill, not a great strategy, even when it is, maybe.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's great, but it's certainly something you can try if you want to, as long as you get multiples of that mill dude.
He also had Julius Jumblemorph in his deck, which was interesting.
Oh, is that the augment host card?
It is not itself an augment or a host. It's
the one where whenever you play a host, you get to go get an augment and attach it. That card is so annoying.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he played it on turn 4 every game we played. Oh my god.
Me too.
It is so annoying.
It was the first thing I killed.
Yes, every time.
With my go to jails, because I'm like, oh, magic word doesn't even affect that.
I know, because that was all of his creatures. They were host and augments. He was running a lot of them, so he would just say, oh, I'm just going to play a creature. And then I'm going to search up the exact augment that I want to put onto it.
Yeah.
Which is effective when you have mill, because he got to then, on my upkeep, mill you every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was frustrating, but it was so much fun. But I think the best part for me was that I came away with some party favors.
Yes.
You're going to reach for them?
I am.
I got a little present from the bearer of the cube. I have a thing for zombies. Not necessarily zombies in Magic, although, yeah. But I've loved zombies since before The Walking Dead came out. So when I saw Extremely Slow Zombie and saw that it was a 4-part narrative, it's not a triptych, it's a anyways. And you see this zombie going from spring all the way back to winter, slowly raising his hand. And in the winter one, he's wearing a Santa hat. I wanted it. I was like, oh my god, I want all 4 of them. I want to frame them. And so Evan gifted me with all 4. We managed to open...
They're common, so...
Yes, we managed to open all 4, and they are fantastic.
I kind of love that Extremely Slow Zombie is... It's a zombie in the classic zombie sense of
That's
like...
the last one.
Oh,
because it ends on the... In the flavor text, it tells you what order to put them
Oh,
in.
yeah.
You can tell in the winter scene that someone has quite obviously come out and put that Santa hat on that zombie and then gone back inside.
Yeah.
And, like, they're just, this is the town zombie that's just wandering around and not moving.
Hence the last strike.
Yeah, and the flavor text across the 4 cards is brains.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do something with those?
Yeah, I'm gonna frame it and hang it on my office wall because, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to cubing this, making this into a cube.
Well, I don't think we really had to twist Evan's arm to say, you should sleeve that whole thing up and bring it back as a cube. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably be doing that again. It was a really good box.
Oh, yeah.
You got most of the
You got 2 spikes.
the guild leaders.
Both of which were played.
Yep.
Evan actually had brought his Canadian Highlander deck, so that was what we used most of the time for the illegal cards. The banned cards, we used the cards that are banned that he have in various formats that he happens to have in his Canadian Highlander deck. So.
Yeah.
Which was really smart. I like that idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a collection, and if I had gotten one of the spikes, I would have gone and gotten an assortment of cards, but I didn't end up getting either of those spikes.
Mm-hmm. But wow, it was so fun. I'm really hoping somebody else gets a box at some point and we can draft it again.
I think we know at least 2 people who have gotten boxes. I don't know what they've done with them, so...
Better not be opened. Or, put them in sleeves and we can just... cube them. Yeah. So that was so much fun. I really enjoyed that.
That was 20 minutes on
Unstable.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah.
So what else have we been doing in Magic?
Oh, I might have become obsessed with a new draft format.
New in quotations.
New to us.
New to us, indeed.
So one of the things that Tams and I often do is try to figure out how to play Magic together in interesting ways. She doesn't really like Commander, and doing sealed from my Theros block cube kind of gets a little old in that I love sealed, but
2-person sealed, there's only so many variations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suggested, I think it was when we were doing laundry and couldn't, conceivably do anything else for a period of time. Hey, why don't we try this Winston format that I have heard about? She's like, what's Winston? And I explained the format of sort of drafting from face down piles. You can go and find a Winston primer out there on the internet. And it turned out to be amazingly fun.
Oh my goodness.
So if you are a Magic playing duo, I highly suggest Winston drafting. It's interesting.
There's so many different things that come into play when you're doing it, because you basically have 3 cards to start with to choose from, and you can choose one of the 3, and any one you pass that you don't choose, you take a card from the pile and add it to that one without looking. So the piles get progressively larger if nobody chooses the pile.
And you look at the cards in succession. So you look at the first one and you choose, without knowing what the other 2 are, whether you want this card or not. Mm-hmm. So
it's a game kind of hidden information in that you will always have different information from your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also, somebody might be more risk-minded so they might be more inclined to continue going to the third pack, in which case they will have just more information generally than the other person, if that other person tends to stop at the first or second.
Yeah, and the other issue that can arise that almost happened to me is if you're like me and in this particular draft, I just kept passing by anything that wasn't in what I wanted to do. So I kept taking the last pack, the single card. And then I realized I may not even have enough cards to draft, to have in a deck, because he would take, this stack of 10 cards. And I'd be like, I take this one. So, it made for a really interesting type of draft. I always found myself in 3 colors at least.
So far, what we found is doing this with my Theros block cube. The decks are a little worse than sealed decks, like a little less focused than even sealed decks, but that makes for an amazing play experience because it goes a little longer, but not Commander long,
And
it
that's
still
perfect
feels like
for
limited.
me. The other cool thing is we started trying to play cards that we would never have really ever touched in a regular focused draft environment, because suddenly, okay, I've been drafting Bant and I don't have enough cards, but I don't want to splash red. Oh, well, I have these 2 enchantments or artifacts that I wouldn't necessarily play, but let's try them and see. So it's really kind of cool.
What have you thought?
So yeah, Tams and I did a couple of drafts this afternoon, just because I also had not done a Winston draft before, again with the Theros Cube. So it was interesting. I believe that once you have practice with the format, and especially when you're used to drafting with the same person, I feel like there's definitely some strategies that can be used that you wouldn't necessarily get to try with other formats. Just because, again, of the way that the piles are arranged and the hidden information and the trade-off of this stack of 10 cards, but most of them are really bad, versus I don't know what this card is. Should I pass by the 10 cards and take a look? So the first deck, I also was 4 colors or something, and got super punished in games 2 and 3 for my mana base. So then the second time, I actually was just 2 colors. And it was a pretty beat-downy type of deck.
It sure was.
It was black-red. I had a lot of lower drop creatures and also a lot of the bestow creatures, which were fine on their own, but were really good when, attached to my Agent of Fate. Forcing Tams to sacrifice creatures and stuff like that.
It made me sad.
So I also had a fair amount of removal in that deck, and a board wipe that would have cleared almost all of her creatures and probably only half of mine.
I forgot there was a board wipe in Theros.
Yeah. What I found incredibly interesting is that both decks that we built, we were not in necessarily what we would normally pick to draft.
Black and red, not my favorite 2 colors of the Magic continuum.
I drafted Bant in both, and I don't mind Bant. I quite like white and blue for obvious reasons, but I needed the green because there was removal, and Sedge Scorpion is a longtime friend of mine.
You end up playing that in every single cube I've ever played against you. Even when it's sealed, you get it.
It's because it's Sedgy. We're like bros. I love Sedgy.
Sedge Scorpion is your charging badger.
He is. I love him so much. He has my heart.
He's just a typhoid rat, right?
But he's green and he's cute.
But he's green, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing though is that in the first round when we drafted, I almost always draft some variation of Bant.
Yeah.
In Theros.
Yep.
Or in Sealed. I usually end up forcing it. If we're being honest. Because in Sealed, you usually have enough of an excellent card quality to go 2 or 3 colors of the colors that you like.
Yeah.
So, I ended up in green-black.
Yeah.
But I was splashing...
something I like.
I was splashing red and splashing blue. Well, I like green-black, and especially in Theros, it's just fine.
Green's where you get the fixing.
Well, I didn't get any fixing.
Uh-oh.
So, anyways, like I said, my deck was greedy, and I got pretty punished for it. But I also did get to see what cards were being left on the piles of cards. And because I was then playing against the same person with the same general, we just used different packs from the cube, so they were all different cards, but same general theme. I went, wow, there was a lot of black and a lot of red just kind of sitting around on the bottom. I'm going to keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. So it just made me more inclined to take the pack of 10 mediocre cards, of which half of them were black and red. Mm-hmm. Because, again, you don't want to find yourself too short on playables.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, in that it's a 2-player draft format, and if you have both passed by a pile long enough that there are 7 to 10 cards there in most of the same color, there might be a mythic or a couple of rares in there. Well, you obviously know that nobody's in those colors, so when do you want to move in? Is that something that you should be thinking about?
And your opponent will also know that that's what's in the pile, so if you do move in, it's not going to be a surprise to them.
Yeah, it's an absolute signal.
The other interesting thing is when you're playing against somebody that you know well, that you've played with for a long time, that you know their patterns and their strengths, it can really inform your decision. Yeah. For example...
Oh, is that why Bant got taken?
Well, here's the thing. In the first group of cards, there was a Bow of Nylea.
Oh, you jerk. Oh, see, she ended up with all the sweet mythics.
It's true. But here's the thing. Laura is a really, really strong green player, and she can build a castle out of crap in green. It doesn't matter how bad the cards are, she will make an amazing deck, and I know that. So I'm like, okay, well... It doesn't hurt just to take it, because I also happen to like this in combination with black. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take this green because I don't want her to have it.
That is so funny, because I was not thinking the exact same thing. I was just keeping it in mind. I was like, wow, that pile has a lot of, like, concerning red cards. Mm-hmm. Or concerning black cards. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna...
You took it the turn before I was going to.
And that's the interesting thing. You don't know when they're going to take it, but you can sort of make an educated guess, especially if you know the person.
Well, the thing is that after, Tams, she looks at this really sweet black-red pack. She goes, I'll give it one more turn. It goes on to the next pack. And then she puts a card on top of it that she doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what tipped it over the edge for me. That was a very good black card that she put on top of it. It was, I think, a removal spell. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, now I'm definitely taking this pack. Mm-hmm. And I'm just moving right on in.
And in the first draft, I picked up the first pack, and it had 4 or 5 cards. And I looked, and there was a Sip of Hemlock. There was a 3/3 Death Touch... Minotaur and 2 other, another removal and another...
I think a Magma Spray was one of them, right?
Yeah, and another good black card. And I'm like, I'm taking a lot of green and white and blue. I'm wondering if she's in black, and I'm wondering if this is a case of... Because I know the Sip of Hemlock was what you put on top the next turn. And I'm like,
I did not see that.
I'm like, okay, screw it. I'm taking this because this is way too much power.
Which is annoying, because I was in black, and I absolutely would have taken that Sip of Hemlock.
Another interesting scenario is, let's say that card that was the last one on top of that black-red, pile was Ordeal of Nylea, and you're in solid green. Mm-hmm. Well, then you just want to take that pile for that one card.
And you may or may not be screwing over.
And you may or may not end up splashing some of those, because, that's a good ramp spell with lots of options for fixing.
And one thing, I think it was you that mentioned it previously, is because we are drafting the Theros Cube, there are not that many multicolor lands.
Yeah. No, there's not a lot of fixing. It's all in green or lands. And
it really slows down the format, which I'm finding a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Well, that's why we keep going back to Theros, because it's just a lot of fun as a set, as a format.
As a cube.
Yeah, as a cube.
Yeah, so we did a lot of that. Steph and I drafted... Winston drafted the entire cube, so that's however many games that is. Then he reset it, and we did it twice more.
Well, that's at least 6, because there are 37 packs. So you need 6 of them for a Winston. Mm-hmm. So that's 6 times, so 8 times. And what I'm really interested in is the Khans of Tarkir cube is almost ready.
Yeah,
and there is a lot more fixing in that. Of course, it's also a 3-color to 5-color format.
That's true.
So I'm very interested.
We'll have to get that done in January.
Yeah,
like to draft.
I mean, absolutely.
Because Step has a list of the cards that he needs. I know I have at least a couple of them.
There's
and the
like
other
a
ones
dozen
are not
of them left.
That costly. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, other than the stuff we've played this week, has there been anything interesting in the news?
You tell us, Tams. You wrote about 20 pages worth of notes.
Well, I could have just pulled it up on my phone, but, So the only thing of real interesting note that...
Aside from the fact that Wizards has created signs now all about inclusivity and having a fun play environment, and
Yes.
they're posting those in game stores.
Which I'd just like to point out is something that has been near and dear to our hearts since we've started playing Magic.
It's why we play where we play.
And it's why we try to do podcasts and why we try to talk, because this is the kind of play that we believe strongly. Thankfully, so does our LGS.
Oh, yeah.
We're very lucky to have found a place that echoes our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it seems like a lot of people echo those beliefs because he's very busy most of the time.
yeah, that's true. So they're trying to come up with ways to kind of make their position clear. And big company, it's hard. They're bringing down the ban hammer on people they feel are not representing the game in a way that they feel should be represented.
For breaking the code of conduct.
Code of conduct, yes, absolutely. And if you break the code of conduct, sucks to be you.
Dick.
Yeah, well, there's that.
I also approve of the way they've been doing it from what I've heard. Like, it's not... they're not wielding the hammer in a heavy-handed kind of way. Mm-hmm. They're doing it more precisely, like surgically. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hate to see people making a game that we all love worse because of just not great behavior.
Or honestly, even, trying to introduce your friends to it, and then they go, oh yeah, no, I tried that once, and then I went into a store and everybody asked me where my boyfriend was, so I left. And you're like...
Did you see what happened to Kate Stark?
A little side note.
Do you know Kate Stark?
No?
So let's explain who Kate Stark is.
So Kate Stark is one of Loading Ready Run. She's a video game streamer.
Okay.
She's Graham Stark's sister.
Okay, yeah, I probably...
She does PUBG. And she's quite good from what I understand.
She was wearing the Winner Winner Chicken Dinner PUBG shirt.
That's sweet.
Out in public.
Yeah.
And somebody asked her, that's the night, did you borrow that from your boyfriend or something?
You can't hear me, but I'm rolling my eyes hard.
So she posted this to the internet with the picture of the shirt, her in the shirt, and everyone who commented was like in full-throated support of how much of an idiot that guy was, and that
well, yeah, because LRR has a great
amazing.
community.
They do, and they have propagated that community.
What was the best response that you said?
I think someone was like, I took it from the last guy I killed or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But how is this 2017 and this is still a thing?
If you're a guy and a girl who you don't know for the first time walks into your game store and you don't know how to speak with her, treat her like a person. Just go, hi, my name is so-and-so. Is this your first time here? Mm-hmm. What formats do you like? What archetypes? Like, you don't have to try and be a jerk or even just come off as a clueless nerd.
Yeah.
This may be going a little too far, but I just assume that everyone knows more than I do until they do something that makes me think, okay, maybe I have some information to offer. But I just assume that people know more than I do about things, so I talk to them as though they are at least on my level in any conversation we might be having. Mm-hmm.
It's disheartening sometimes to still, it's always going to happen, but it's like, it's 2017, why is this still a thing?
I don't think we should say it's always going to happen, because I don't think it needs to.
And I have to say, one thing that I have seen happen, even at our store, if a woman is there and she's playing, this happened to be her first time out for F&M, so she never really drafted before. Mm-hmm. Her and I were just chatting about, after all the games were done, just about, what she might have done better to improve her deck. Mm-hmm. And suddenly a horde of men descended upon us, and she had about 5 people completely rebuild her deck. And it's like, that wasn't really what we were doing. And also, nobody really asked for you to do that. Like,
Yeah.
that is so overwhelming, even if you're, for anybody, like, just having a bunch of experienced players come down and completely rebuild your deck for you without asking.
There's a way to help and there's a way not to. Some people get very excited to be able to...
Yeah, and it was absolutely not out of malice or anything. Just people love passing on their information to new players.
Yeah.
But it can be very overwhelming, especially if you're a single woman in a sea of men. Like, just, try and be friendly and be nice. Just don't force things on
I
other
think,
people.
like in all things, the answer is ask.
Yes.
Hey, I have some ideas.
Do you mind if I have a look at that? Would
or,
you like some advice?
Yeah, exactly. So, but hopefully we're moving on from the horribleness of the last couple of months, and things are going to get better.
Really want to focus on it. So, Tams, you were telling us about your news.
So, Wizards has announced new product and the removal of some current long-standing product. And Steph is sighing. So, dual decks are being canceled. Say goodbye to dual decks.
That's fair. I haven't bought any of the last, 10.
Okay.
I won one at a pre-release.
So did I.
Yeah.
So they are bringing on new product. They are called Challenger decks. The final dual decks will be Elves versus Inventors, which sounds kind of interesting.
I assume it's going to be Kaladesh themed.
I would think so. I don't know. Just the problem is Elves is kind of boring. Like, there's just so many products that are tribal elves.
Elf-centric,
Yeah. Well, the first one was Elves versus Goblins, so they want to kind of echo that, but still...
Well, maybe it's going to be like Kaladeshian elves, like the Rishkar's brood,
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is what is coming in to replace it. So they're called Challenger decks. There are going to be 4 separate individual 75-card decks geared at standard play for people to use for standard play. Now, what they are saying is they are all playable and competitive at local levels. So take that for what it is. What does competitive at local levels mean? I guess that means good enough to play against other people who are playing the same decks. I don't know that it would be competitive at our standard.
Because our standard, we usually get kind of a good combination of people who are playing very good decks and people who are playing, janky homebrews, unless it's the championship, in which case you're going to see more of the net decks and a bit fewer of the jankies.
That's also where I tend to bring my janky homebrew.
But yeah, honestly, we probably get half and half.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's a way to pull people, for you when you started.
Yep. I picked up one of the intro decks, or the what do we decide they were called again?
I think they were intro decks.
Okay, so the intro decks, which was just a pre-constructed 2-colored dragon red-green beatdown deck.
Draconic Fury or a Karka's Fury or whatever.
Well, it looks like these are going to be something similar, but maybe a little bit
I got
better.
stomped.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's a little bit better.
Some are better than other, or always have been.
The problem is, for a Dragon's deck, it had no way of interacting with players.
Which is silly, yeah. So this one will contain mythics and mythics and spoilers, mythics and rares. It also comes with a card box. Capable of holding the deck and your 15-card sideboard.
Is that
Did
sleeved?
it say 75 sleeved cards, or did it not?
Possibly. I don't know. I missed that.
Yeah.
It also comes with a spin down and a guide. So it seems like an off the shelf. Grab it on your way to an F&M and
you walk into the store, you say, I've never played Magic before, what should I do? They go, buy this, sit down, we'll have a couple of games of Standard.
Yeah. Now its point of purchase is $29.99 US, which seems reasonable if it's a playable deck.
I don't know how that's going to translate into Canadian funds, but not that Wizards needs to care about that because they're most of their sales of
but for
that
$40
kind of stuff.
You can put together a pretty solid net deck.
Yeah. So
yeah. But if this is just focused on people who don't play or haven't played a lot, or somebody like me who doesn't really particularly care for constructed, but I wouldn't mind playing standard for fun.
My question is, why is this replacing dual decks and not planeswalker decks, which are standard legal?
Probably because the planeswalker decks are selling and the dual decks are not.
I guess. I mean, I don't really know what the audience for the dual decks was supposed to be, but now you have 2 different products for standard players?
Yeah, so this is interesting to me because the dual decks came together. It was 2 decks, you could play them together.
Yeah, you're sitting around the kitchen table with a friend.
That's what I thought it was geared at, like people who play kitchen table.
Casual, not play in the store players. Now, I really like the dual decks because, okay, the dual deck, Is It versus Golgari
was my favorite.
the first thing that I bought when I came back into Magic.
That's
like,
what
I had all my old cards
when I came back into
and
Magic.
people, traded me cards or gave me cards or stuff. But it was the first thing I bought because I'm like, oh, this is 2 decks that are built to be played against each other. And they were really fun to play. And if more of the dual decks had been like those, I probably would have continued to buy the dual decks. And not just fun to play, but like the next one I got was Sorin versus Tybalt. And those were...
That sounds like a great matchup.
Yeah, not great.
Poor Tybalt.
But the atmosphere of the decks were really good. And I feel like in the last little bit, the atmosphere of the decks has been not a main focus. When you're talking about Is It versus Golgari, that introduces you to a major story element of the plane of Ravnica. And that was right before Return to Ravnica came out.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, like goblins versus merfolk. There are no goblins on Ixalan.
Not
So
as a tribe, no.
I guess Angrath versus... Well, the Planeswalker decks are now supposed to be the story element, but there's more going on in the Plains than Planeswalkers.
Yes.
You know, like Saint Traft versus the zombie hordes would
Oh,
have been...
whoa, that
Blessed
would have been
versus Cursed
sweet.
was like supposed to be that, but it didn't have that feel when I was looking at it, you know? So I feel like there was some lost Vorthos equity there, you know?
Yeah.
New Phyrexia versus the Coalition was one that I wish I'd picked up when I saw it, and I didn't, because it had right there on the front, what's his name? Urza, and a Yawgmoth-looking thing battling against each other, and, like, it was all story on the box art. It wasn't just fancy planeswalkers who are there for no reason.
Right.
And I feel like now there's no product that's for that. Like introduction to the plane.
Yeah.
Introduction to what's going on. When I got back into Magic, right before RTR came out, this Is It versus Golgari was like, oh, there's a story to this game. I am now invested. And I haven't really felt that about anything. Like even the Theros one, the Heroes versus Monsters.
So they're
Kinda?
missing out on the players that really do enjoy these.
That really dig the art, basically.
The art, the story, the narrative aspect of the game.
So we don't know, because they aren't coming out for like a year, what these decks are going to look like from that point of view. But right now, I don't feel like there's a lot of the Magic products out there that are serving that part of the community. So that's something to think about. Wizards, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Tweet at Morrow.
Yeah. I mean, there are also story people who might
Yeah.
be better to tweet at about it, but I'll
Alison
look into
Lurs?
it.
Yeah.
Ms. Lurs.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it as far as
News that we
goes.
wanted to talk about.
We
Yeah.
missed a week and there's not much news.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess that's a good thing?
Yeah, but we did want to quickly mention potential change in format for us.
So for the new year.
Yes.
So we're thinking about maybe instead of doing things the way that we have been, focusing more on like, and I'm using kind of quotations here, but a project-based type of thing. So instead of just taking things week to week, we might decide, oh, well, this month or for this 6 weeks, we're going to do a D&D campaign set on a Magic World. Or we're going to build a cube. Or a Canadian Highlander deck, which will be funny because none of us know what we're doing in Canadian Highlander.
but more like focused content on specific issues that almost a planes walk through the flavors of magic.
Yeah, so just kind of tackling a lot of kind of smaller, more specific things, and then that way we'll be moving around a little bit from month to month, but we'll still be, hanging out, doing magic stuff.
And I think we'll try to find a way to, I don't want to say edit the podcast in a way that we can still provide some, little anecdotal stories about our play and talk about topics that we want to, but try to find a way to put it on the podcast where there's if you miss it this week, it's still going to be of value to you next week. You're not going to be like, oh, well, there's no point in listening to the podcast this week because I know all the news.
Yeah.
Because we're really not a news show. We prefer to talk about how things we hear, how we feel about them.
How the news affects us.
Yeah. So it may be something as simple as doing a What's New With Us thing at the very end of the podcast so that if people, are coming in 2 months later, they can, at the end of the regular part, they can be like, okay, I don't really need to hear about 6 months ago's play.
Yeah.
But that's something we're going to work on. But we do want to open it up to people who listen. And if you have suggestions,
either for topics or how best to tackle this particular type of format and how you'd like things structured.
Or just what you've liked about the podcast and what you don't like. Just, things to let us know so that we know what you guys are looking for.
Yeah, because we want to try to come up with something that's our own, and something fun and magical, but
and valuable.
Yeah, but not just repeating stuff that other podcasts are already doing better because they've been there longer. So
or they have more time.
Yeah, or they have more time. So so that's what's on the agenda. We're not going anywhere. We're just trying to look to build an even better product. So it looks like that is it for this week.
I do believe.
And I believe we are off next week because it is the holiday season and we, frankly...
are not going to be here.
Well, yeah that's fair. We're going to see all of us are except for poor Step who has to work. Laura and I are going to see my parents and we're leaving Step alone.
I'm going to have a wonderful time with some friends. I don't know.
Pizza and beer and cats.
Probably, yeah.
You'll take care of the babies. Yeah, so hope everyone has a good, safe.
Yes.
Yes, stay safe.
Holiday season.
Especially if you're anywhere in Ontario because it's supposed to snow for the next couple of weeks and be really cold.
So if you're asking when is it going to snow, the answer is yes. That's right. So thank you for listening and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.